My name is Stan Jay, and I'm the president and owner of Mandolin Brothers Limited, Ltd., right here in glorious Staten Island, New York. Staten Island is one of the 5 boroughs that comprise New York City. We are called, thankfully, the Forgotten Borough, which is fine with me. And that's probably because you can't get here by subway. There's no subway that'll take you. But you can get here by ferry boat. And so if you happen to be visiting Manhattan and you're looking for a great thing to do in an afternoon and you happen to play guitar, mandolin, banjo, or ukulele, we think you'd have a ball. You'd have a great time. The ferry boat ride is 20 minutes and it's free. It doesn't get better than that. And then the bus ride from the ferry terminal to here is 14 minutes, or you can grab a cab and it'll take you here in 6 minutes. Either is fine. We've been around for quite a long time, 41 years to be exact. I co-founded the store in 1971 with a partner, and everybody said, well, how'd you come up with the name? And the name was, actually for me it was easy. The guitar was getting all the attention, guitar, guitar, guitar. Or, okay, there were 2 or 3 ways you could have a store. You could have your name, the owner's name, with the word guitar or music. You could have the location with the word guitar or music, or you could have a musical term with the name guitar or music. So what's some examples? Sam Ash Music, the owner's name. Washington Music Center, location. Rondo Music in Union, New Jersey is a musical term with the word music after it. And I said, trite doesn't work for me, never has. I want a different name. So mandolin, because guitar got all the attention and mandolin wasn't getting very much attention at all, and it deserves it. And brothers, because I had a partner, and we were 2 guys in our 20s starting a new company, and it was exciting. And guess what? It's still exciting. I'm still having a really good time. 41 years of having a great time being around guitars and people and banjos and mandolins and people who play them is a very agreeable thing to do with one's life. So what we have developed here is a mecca, and we're often called that, where people can come, and when they walk in the front door, very often they're told, there are only 2 rules, and then they look at you really suspiciously, and they say, oh, well, okay. And I say, 1, you can play every instrument in the place, and 2, you can ask me up to 1 million questions. And then they're totally disarmed, and they say, oh, okay, great, that's nice.
Hi, my name is Morty Jacoby. I happen to be a real estate attorney, and my office, fortunately, is about 5 blocks from Mandolin Brothers. And I get the privilege of coming here almost every day for a little bit of time just to regain my sanity and keep myself at peace, because this is one of the most unique guitar stores I've ever been in. Let me tell you about Mandolin Brothers. Mandolin Brothers is like no other music store in the world. You can come in here and you can play any instrument that you want, anywhere from a lower priced instrument to a high priced new instrument, or something that's being sold used, a vintage, and no one is breathing down your neck. No one is pressing you for, are you ready to buy it? 2 seconds after you pick up the guitar. It is really a very unique environment for the musician. People come here from all over the world because they've heard about it and they don't believe the experience that is gotten here. I know of no other store that would have this many Martin guitars available, and Taylors and Collings and all the other unique luthiers that are out there now, the smaller luthiers, in addition to the big companies that are there. So it really is a very special place. And you can stay here all day, and you can come back tomorrow and do it again. And no one is, they're happy to have you here. I've been here when professional musicians are here looking at instruments and just enjoy their playing and sitting around picking and schmoozing about guitars and things. It's just a wonderful place to be.
And people are amazed at the quality of the instruments that they find here, because I believe, and this is one of our mottos, we have many mottos, in the phrase, "We will not sell you any instrument we would not want to own ourselves." That's a good one because it narrows it down very quickly to only having good things for sale and no mediocre things or poor things. So we are different than any other store that I can think of. And that's the reason people come here from every state in the United States and every country on the face of the planet. We get visitors from virtually everywhere other than North Korea and Iran. And where they probably don't like the music very much. I'm a musician, having learned to play guitar in college. I went to Penn State, and I've often credited that experience of going to Penn State and becoming a guitar player as making me what I am today. If I hadn't become a guitar player and I hadn't been in that environment where there were other people who were willing to show you things that they knew that you wanted to know, it was a very nurturing environment. And when I finally left upon graduation, my parents allowed me or paid for a car trip across country to Berkeley, California, in the month after I graduated. And there, I hung out mostly at a store called Lundberg, John and Deirdre Lundberg on Dwight Way in Berkeley, and saw how a small folk music and mostly guitar and fretted instruments store worked, and watched them as they worked, and they were charming and delightful and wonderful people. In my summer and Christmas vacations while I was at college, I worked at Rondo Music, which I mentioned, and that was on Route 22 in Union, New Jersey. And there, I saw how a large, successful, full-line music store worked. And so unbeknownst to me, A, I was a guitar player, B, I was watching how people in music stores handled sales and worked with people and customers. And lastly, I was buying and either trading or selling instruments that I could find in music stores and secondhand shops in the Newark, New Jersey, Irvington, New Jersey area while I was in college. So everything was coming together for me to have the opportunity and the ability to co-found Mandolin Brothers in 1971. People say, well, why Staten Island? Why not Manhattan? And the answer to that is pretty easy. The answer is that I live 2.5 minutes away by car. I have a very short commute, and to me, that comfort is it's one of the most important things I can think of. Having your own business, I am so lucky. I work with my children, my son and my daughter. My son Eric is a salesperson here, and my daughter is our head of customer service, and they both do a great job. And there are a lot of other employees, of course, too, but it's so nice to have a place to come that's quiet, that's inviting, where you're told you can play any instrument in the place. I work with my children. I get to play guitar when I demonstrate guitar for customers, and occasionally I'll back up a customer who's playing, because what I do is I play harmony guitar to other guitars, or I play harmony guitar parts to vocalists. And that's what I've always done. There's been nothing but fun for 41 years. And not many people can say that. Unfortunately, it's sad. This is my son Eric, and he is our chief salesperson.
Hello.
And answers questions for customers both in the showroom and by telephone and by email. When he was born, 30-something years ago, we named him Eric Martin J. And the reason that I did that is because I knew that there'd become a time when people would ask him, "Do you know anything about guitars?" And he would be able to say, "Guitars? Martin is my middle name." And here he is.
Started working here part-time as a dedicated string changer, and listening to the rest of the staff talk about guitars day by day and learning via osmosis and that kind of thing. And started doing sales about 2 years ago, and I've been doing sales ever since then, I guess. I play music that I listen to, which is more, I guess, sort of pop and rock oriented, so it's a bit of a different demographic than a lot of the players that come through here. They're more bluegrass and folk. But I listen to that kind of thing my whole life, and I sort of have learn to listen to what they like in their guitars from their own standpoint. I like working with my father because he is hilarious. He's an excellent person. He is a phenomenal boss. I get told day in, day out that I'm lucky to work here, and I agree. I am lucky to work here. It's a very pleasant work environment, and the customers are great, and it's nothing quite like having a walking encyclopedia that you're related to, to see every day and talk with. It's just great. So this is my sister Allison, who is our head of customer service. And what would you say you do here?
Well, I'm a jack of many trades. I do a lot of customer service. I update our website. I keep track of inventory, ordering it, notifying customers when certain instruments come in. Just general customer service, I think. I answer questions that I can answer. I'm actually not a guitar player, so those kinds of questions I refer to people like Eric and Stan, but I try and answer as many questions as I can.
Strangely enough, we've got 4 women that work here, and they don't play guitar or any instruments. And all of the men here do, whether they do sales, repairs, or everything else.
In the original period, the early period, it didn't take long for us to become extremely well known to a large audience. And one wonders, how come? How do you get from a startup to a place that's known to hundreds or thousands of people? And the answer is, I worked hard. I don't know. I think that's probably good advice for anyone going into business. Is you have to do the work. And so I started to write descriptions of the instruments. I ran ads in every conceivable magazine that had anything at all to do with guitar or banjo or mandolin. I knew them all. I ran ads in shoppers' papers coast to coast. Got a great story. A person came to visit and he said, I was in Kansas on a dusty road and we were thirsty, so we pulled into a general store. And while we were waiting to get lunch, I picked up a shopper's paper just off the counter and I opened up to the classifieds and you had an ad in there. How do you do that? Well, I wanted to be everywhere. I wanted to be ubiquitous. And so I made sure that a lot of energy was spent in promotion, and it pays off more in ways you could never imagine. We started getting, in those days they were called letters, from people with pictures of their instruments and with questions about other instruments that they either owned or wanted to own, and or who were interested in the instruments that we had for sale. And I would answer every letter diligently, which I always have. And after a while, famous people started to come to see us. So one day you'd be in the shop and Dave Van Ronk would come in, or Mike Seeger would come in, or Joshua Jr. would come in. And then major recording artists started to come. I think the first was Stephen Stills from Crosby, Stills and Nash. And he came with Graham Nash. And that was unbelievably delightful because, we just worshiped their music. And Stephen loves pearl inlaid Martin guitars and fancy guitars, and he bought a bunch of 45 and 42 series guitars from us. But the pleasure, of course, was all ours because we loved meeting them and being around them. And then one day we get a call from Joni Mitchell's photographer, whose name is Joel. And I know we can look up his name on the internet, but last name. And he said, Joni and I are driving in Staten Island and we'd like to come over and visit you. I said, ooh, that'd be great. So they came up to the shop, and I have to say this was the original location of the shop, which used to be 580 Bay Street in Stapleton, which is a waterfront area, and a bit seedy, which if you're going to start a new company, it's okay to be in a seedy area for your beginnings. And it was definitely that. And they came, it was a second floor walk up, and they came upstairs, and Joni just wonderful, charming, delightful, beautiful, everything that we know about her. One of the world's finest singer-songwriters that I've ever heard, and still is, in my opinion. And chose two instruments, one of which was a very old, very beautiful 1913 Martin 0028 herringbone, and the other was unexpected. It was a Gibson Mandocello called a K4, which is a very large, very fancy baritone, I would say baritone voiced instrument. The mandolin family is comprised of the soprano, which is the mandolin, the alto, which is the mandola, which is the equivalent of the viola, and then the octave mandolin, which there is no equivalent of in the violin family, which is an octave below mandolin, and then the mandocello, which is the baritone. And she loved that sound. It's still an exciting sound, like no other sound you've ever heard, very rumbly and very dark, and it's tuned lower than a guitar. So it adds something to the mix that no one is used to hearing, and it can be very effective in the recording studio. And she bought both instruments. At that time, our head of repair was John Monteleone, who is considered the most illustrious and highest level luthier, guitar builder that is, in the United States of America. There was a Metropolitan Museum of Art exhibit last year. That was D'Angelico, D'Acquisto, and Monteleone. Of course, John is the only guy who's still alive, but what an honor to be in an exhibit at the Metropolitan. And we had hired him. He was teaching in the BOCES program in Long Island, and was looking for an opportunity to work in the music industry. And so we hired him in 1973 or 72, I forget. And he was there and able to set up the guitars that Joni bought, and she told us specifically what she wanted. Well, this is where the story gets really interesting. On the way home, when she left us in the car, she had an idea for a song. And the song was autobiographical. And in an interview much later, she said that this song, which is titled Song for Sharon, is the most introspective, the most autobiographical song she's ever written, and also one of her favorites. And it starts off with the line, "I went to Staten Island, Sharon, to buy myself a mandolin." And she rhymes mandolin with mannequin. She sees the white dress of love on a store-bought mannequin. And it's a story about how her life diverged from her friend Sharon's life as beautiful. Sharon has the big house with the picket white fence and the 2.5 children, and Joni's life was a professional life. And so it's a very wistful song and a very beautiful song with wonderful guitar work and wonderful melody. And we didn't know what to say. I mean, that's just an honor to have one of the greatest singer-songwriters write a song just based on and derived from the experience of coming out to Staten Island to buy herself a mandolin. And she wrote some of it on the Staten Island ferry, because at that time, pre-9/11, you could still take your car on the ferry. And so one of the lines in the song is "Big boat churning with a belly full of cars," which is so beautiful. And that was the way it was. And which took her back to Manhattan, and she had a home in Manhattan. When it didn't come out for a while, but it came out on an album called Hejira, which is a wonderful album. It has the song Amelia on it, which is lovely, and a bunch of other famous Joni Mitchell songs. And then it reappeared again in a retrospective album called Songs of a Country Girl around 2 or 3 years ago. So you could tell she liked that song. Meeting famous people is a whole other subject. And we've gotten virtually the entire world of acoustic players have been here, or we've done business with them. We've sold 2 pieces to Bob Dylan. We've sold pieces, Bruce Springsteen's wife bought him a mandolin, a beautiful fancy mandolin for a Christmas present. Here's a big one. George Harrison's wife wanted to buy him a Christmas present and called up, and we had a national ukulele, which is very rare. They're really hard to find today, pre-war. And we spoke about it, and she chose it, and we sent it to her, and she gave it to him for Christmas, and he loved it. And when he was in New York, subsequently, around 1993, he was in a limo, And the driver of the limo happened to mention, "Oh, I'm from Staten Island." And George Harrison said, "Staten Island? Do you think we could visit Mandolin Brothers?" And the driver says, "Yeah, I've been there a lot of times. I can take you right there." And so they came over one day. They just walked in the front door as like you would anyone else. Unlike Joni, he didn't call first. He should have called first, but he didn't. And we spent the morning talking about ukuleles and nationals and ukulele banjos. And he was a very low-key guy. He was wearing a tweed sports jacket with leather patches on the elbows. And so I could only describe him as sort of looking like a college professor. But very nice and thoughtful man. And he told me one thing that in my whole life, no one else has ever told me. In fact, I've never heard it from anybody else. And that is, he said, "Did you know that Mussolini, the dictator of Italy during World War II, was a tenor banjo player?" No, I never knew that. I never heard of that. So we kidded about it. And I said, "You mean like you're home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and the phone rings, and a person calls up, he says, 'Hey, bring your guitar to the castle because Benito wants to play ragtime tonight.'" And I said, "That's so wild, because we know musicians, and they're nice. They're all nice people, musicians. They're all great. So your first instinct is how bad can he be? Play tenor band?" I love that he told me that. It was so cool, and I'm glad that we met him. We also did business with his partner Paul McCartney. Sir Paul always had a Hofner Beatle bass, as you know. In fact, it's the only reason it's called the Hofner Beatle bass, because he used it. It's actually called the Hofner violin bass. And for years, all through the Beatles period, it was misintonating. Do you know what that is? It's when you put your finger on a particular fret and you expect it to play a particular note, but for some reason it doesn't play that note. It plays a different note. It's either too low or too high. And I think it must have driven him crazy, because your natural tendency is to compensate subconsciously. After a while, it just becomes second nature, to push a little harder when you play that string on that fret to get it to come up to the pitch that you want it to be. So, his left-hand man, whose name is John Hamill, that's his head technician, interviewed 5 world-class guitar repair shops, seeking to find out how they would repair this problem if they were given an opportunity to. And apparently our shop told him exactly the right answer, because about a month later he called up and said, "Paul would like you to repair his bass." Oh my God. So Paul sent the violin bass, Hofner, over on the Concorde. It had its own seat. That was expensive. And John Hamill brought it in. I was here for 3.5 days. It was very difficult, arduous, complicated repair. And our head of repair, who's first class, his name is Flip Van Domberg Scipio at that time, knew what to do. He knew that the manufacturer had put those frets in the wrong spaces, and they were slightly off. And so what he had to do was pull the frets that were the offensive ones and fill in the space with the same color wood. And then using logarithm, which is how frets are designed, that's the way they've always been designed. They have to be done that way. He was able to calculate where the right places are and re-inlay those frets into their proper spaces in such a way, and this is, by the way, our definition of professional guitar repair, that when the work is done, there's no indication, no sign that it would ever tell you that work was ever done. That's my definition of what real professional guitar work is, and we work at that level.
I came in, I knew it was coming in, and I was told that the Paul McCartney's Beatle bass was downstairs in the shop, and I have permission to go to the shop. And I was always a huge Beatle fan, so I go to the workbench where the bass is lying, and I look down, and I knew of nothing else to do but lean over and kiss it, because it was Paul McCartney's Beatle bass. And this guy went nuts, who was the bodyguard for the guitar, but the people in the shop calmed him down and said it was okay. But that's as close as I've gotten to the actual Beatles.
And when we returned it to John Hamill, who was here the whole time in the daytime, to bring back to Paul, we didn't know what to think because we didn't get any immediate feedback. And we waited, and the fall of that year, in Bass Player magazine, in an interview, Paul McCartney said, quote, "My bass never played in tune, but I brought it to Mandolin Brothers and they set it straight." Oh, we all exhaled simultaneously. So we had no idea how well it went over, but that was so lovely. After that, we did other business with him too.